Hi there, and welcome to my home. So here I am back in front of my little patio after a couple of weeks of being surrounded by seasons, I guess, festive surroundings and backdrops and things like that. So thank you for tuning in. Before I dive in, I wanted to touch a little bit on what we talked about last week, because what really blew me was last week I talked about embracing both sides, having one foot on each side. And we had the most views that I have ever had on any other live video that I have ever done since I started doing this. We had not only more views, but we had tons of comments, feedback. It seems that so many of you who are my audience, who follow me or who know of me, so many of you related to what I was saying. And if you haven't watched last week's, I would love for you to watch it after we finish this. But I'm just going to do a really quick recap because I want to dive deeper into that subject, since I'm now realizing how many of you relate to that subject and how many of you it applies to. And I want you to know it doesn't apply to everyone on the planet. You are in the minority, and yet those of you who follow me, it applies to nearly all of you. So here's what I talked about last week. I talked about when we deliver messages, like when we're delivering messages, spiritual messages, and when I talk about stuff that I experienced in my NDE, and I talk about the other side, I talk about us being six sensory beings, people who tune in are coming at it from their own perspective, and we all have different perspectives, but some people who are tuning in to messages like mine are coming at it from a space of living as having constantly believed that we are just five sensory beings, and you're opening up to the idea that maybe we are more, that we're six sensory beings, or that we're actually part of us is in 4D as opposed to just totally in three-dimensional. But there are others of us who are coming at it from the perspective where we have always felt that we are something more. It comes naturally to us to feel that way, but we're actually struggling with living in this three-dimensional world. So in other words, some people are struggling with embracing the fourth dimension, or embracing the fact that we have more than six or more sensories. Other people are fine with all of that, but are having trouble with embracing this physical material world. So I spoke about, last week's video was targeted for people who are totally happy living in the six sensory four-dimensional world, who are totally happy with embracing all of that and have no issues with that, but are struggling with living in the physical world. So this is what I want to dive deeper into. I want to dive deeper into this subject because you are actually in the minority, and yet in terms of my audience, within my audience, you're in the majority. Most of the people out in the world in general, are immersed in three-dimensional, five-sensory thinking. Everything, all our paradigms are immersed in that. Our education system, particularly our medical system, everything is treated from the physical. Everything, when we talk about nutrition and everything, we don't talk about how it makes us feel or how much pleasure. We talk very little about how much pleasure we get from eating, or how it makes us feel, or how it affects us energetically. It's always about the physical, what it does to us, even when we're talking about nutrition, and even when we're talking about alternative medicine, it's always very much rooted in the physical. And so people have trouble, then this is the average person out there, as a generalization, people have trouble believing in something more than five sensory, and believing in something more than there being a three-dimensional existence. So, but there are so many of you out there who are full-blown intuits, clairvoyants, psychics, sensitives, people who are just super sensitive, who've always been in touch with that other world. And this is what I want to address today. I want to address all of you who are having trouble fitting into this physical world because of the overwhelming response I had last week from mentioning that it's the other way around. And I need to address those of you who are fine in the other world but are struggling with this world. So chances are that if this is you, that you are totally happy living in your six sensory, four-dimensional world, or it could be five-dimensional world, and you're totally happy, you're an intuit, you're psychic, you're all of that, but you're really struggling with applying that here in the physical. If that is the case for you, you are, I would say you are an empath. And I only recently, in the last few years, I say recently, it could have been 3-4 years ago, that I discovered the term empath and started looking into it. I didn't know that I had been an empath my whole life. I had no idea. And that was the cause of my struggle in life. And what I realized shortly after I had my near-death experience, and I started reading other people's near-death experiences, I realized that my experience was the opposite of many other people's experiences. And at that time, I did not realize I was an empath. I did not know anything about it. But let me explain. Let me break it down for you and let me explain. So when I had this experience that completely changed me, the person I was before was someone who felt everybody else's pain. I was someone who was of service to everyone except me. I was basically someone who needed people to feel good, otherwise I didn't feel good. I was a rescuer. I was a giver. I did not know how to receive. I was a doormat. I was a people pleaser. I was non-confrontational because I needed people to feel good. I know there's a lot of you out there who will relate to that. If there's someone in the room who doesn't feel good, I will go out of my way to make them feel good. The other thing is that if someone is in a funny mood, I'll kind of wonder if I did anything to cause that. I'll be like, oh, was it something I said or did? Can I do something to make it better? I would always want to do something to make them feel better. That is an empath, someone who needs everyone around them to feel good so that they can feel good themselves. Someone who feels the pain of others in your own body. I was unable to watch movies or TV shows that had a lot of blood and gore, that had killings and a lot of pain. I just couldn't take it because I would feel it. So I didn't even know there was a term for it. I didn't know I was wired differently. I didn't know any of that. I didn't even know that the majority of the world is not like that, except that it's pretty obvious because when you watch TV, when you look at stuff out there, they're not created for us empaths. They're created for people who don't feel that way. That's why we're always cringing, or I'm always closing my eyes at particular scenes on TV, or I can't take too much of that. I can't take too much of the news. It just brings me down. So anyway, not knowing any of that, when I had the NDE, so also prior to that, a lot of the spiritual teachings, I was really into going to spiritual teachings and groups, but a lot of the spiritual teachings encourage you to basically overcome your ego, suppress your ego, transcend your ego. So your ego is bad. Your ego is the enemy. You have to make it small. And so I would do that. I believed all that. I listened to that. And I'm sure for a lot of people that message is beneficial. But I would do that and it would make me even smaller. I would listen to messages about I need to serve more, I need to do more, I need to, how can I serve more people? How can I be more selfless? So I didn't realize that I was already someone who did not know how to embrace my ego. I was already someone that was out there serving and giving and not knowing how to receive. So all these messages made me even smaller. They made me dim my light even more. They made me suppress myself even more. They made me almost invisible. During the near-death experience, what I realized was that I was supposed to love myself and embrace myself and embrace my ego because my light was needed in the world. That's what I discovered. I discovered that I had to be fearless about loving myself and embracing myself, that I was not supposed to think that it's selfish to take care of myself and to have my own needs met. Those were the messages I got. So here's where it gets interesting. And I very rarely talk about this, very rarely. And I love that this is a new subject. So when I came out of the NDE and came out of the coma and healed and everything, and I would describe what I experienced on the other side, the fact that I felt the oneness, the fact that I connected with my deceased loved ones, and all of this. I described all of this. And then people would share with me online NDE stories that were printed online and other books on NDEs. And so what I noticed, though, was that many of them, not all, but many of them, were NDEs from people who had sudden deaths, maybe a car accident or something, or a heart attack or something. And all these people, many of them, the one thing they had in common was that they were not empaths. They were not aware that there was something more. I was someone who already was aware. I was someone who was really happy in the other world. I was someone who did not know how to take care of myself on this level. I was someone who was never taking care of my body, my needs, none of those things, because I thought it doesn't matter. That's my ego. That's my ego. I never embraced my physical body. I never loved my body. I never took pride in my body. And I never embraced even, let's say, abundance or having money. I rejected that, thinking that's not spiritual. So basically, I was someone who was really happy living in this world of spirituality and thought that the physical world was bad. It was materialist. I had to detach myself from it. So when I had my NDE, I learned that I am here for a reason. I'm supposed to embrace my body. I'm supposed to embrace this physical world. I'm supposed to commit myself to living in this world. That's why I came here. I'm supposed to marry the two together. But for me, living in that world was easier. So my work, or the muscle I had to stretch, was the one in embracing the physical self, the physical body, the physical pleasures. That was the harder one for me. That was the harder muscle for me to stretch. The one to actually be able to receive and to love myself and to nurture myself and to find pleasure in this world. That was the harder one for me, because it was so much easier for me to give other people, to help other people find their purpose and their pleasure, but not for me to do it. The NDE taught me that I matter, that I have to do it, and that I have to shine my light. And that as long as I'm shining my light, that other people can be helped. And interestingly, as I said, as I was reading other people's NDEs, most of them had the opposite message, where they were in high-paying jobs, where they had all their material possessions. They had the cars, they had the houses. In some cases, stories were written by men who were unfaithful to people, and they would treat women not very well. But their NDE changed them and made them become more sensitive and more connected to everyone. It made them less of this world, because they were already immersed in this world. And so the NDE made them more connected to the other world and made them realize that, oh, I can't keep hurting people. I have to stop thinking so much of myself. I have to transcend my ego. And so the NDE changed them, and they became less materialistic, less self-serving, less of those things. So this was super interesting for me to read, because I started to realize my NDE did the opposite for me. At first, when I started sharing my story, I remember one of the reasons that I stopped sharing very quickly was, apart from the fact that Sometimes the people in the academic community, they're constantly stuck on the topic of the cancer and the healing and the medical records, and they want to go deeper and deeper into that, while I actually want to go deeper into what I experienced on the other side. So I stopped sharing with that community. But when I started sharing in the general public, in the beginning, what started to happen was that people would say to me, but your message is very selfish. That's very egotistical. The world doesn't need messages like that. That's when I stopped sharing, and I was very hesitant who I would share with. And it was only much later that I started to discover that I'm on the other end of the spectrum, that I am not. So if we take it as a spectrum, where at one end of the spectrum you have the empaths, and at the other end of the spectrum, so you have this line, and at the other end of the spectrum, let's say the extreme other end, I would say sociopaths, I guess, is the extreme opposite of empath, sociopath. But most people fall somewhere in between. But the thing is, I want to address today the empaths, because the empaths are the people that fall through the cracks. I was one of those people that fell through the cracks, where I felt no message applied to me. And if this is you, then if you felt that, then this message is for you. If you are an empath, you will feel that most spiritual messages do not apply to you, and most messages for people who are entrenched in the physical also don't apply to you. That's what it was like for me. So here's what I mean. Many of the conventional, and it's changing today, but many of the conventional spiritual teachers, even the ones who talk about the other side and NDEs and so on, will still speak about, and they mean well. I want to say they mean well, and I don't blame them because of the way the world is, but they will say things like, we must transcend the ego is bad, the ego is the enemy, ego is about edging God out, and so on. They will also say that we must always be of service first, and so on. That's all wonderful for the population at large. It really is. I want to be clear here. This message is for empaths. Empaths need a very different spiritual message. Very different. You don't fall into the normal category. That's what I found. After my near-death experience, I realized that being an empath contributed to my illness. Falling for all the normal, conventional spiritual messages that are targeted for the non-empaths, and I gravitated to those messages, even though they were targeted for the non-empaths, because there were no messages targeted for me. I gravitated, and that was also part of my downfall, because those messages of suppressing your ego, continue to serve, continue that it's selfish to look after yourself, it's selfish to give yourself, you have to give others first, and all of that, all those messages continued to contribute to my downfall, to the point of making me invisible. So I realized after my NDE that there were no role models that I could find, there might have been, but I couldn't find them, that had messages that were totally tailored to me. So I had to figure it out for myself at that time. When I would read, like really commonly, some of the other NDEs would say, I was someone who was really selfish, who neglected my spouse, and I just focused on making money. But when I had my NDE, this all changed, and I'm now completely the opposite. With me, it was like, I was someone who was always giving. I struggled with making money because I felt guilty I thought money was not spiritual. I was the complete opposite. And after the NDE, it was like, oh, I'm supposed to take care of myself. It's okay to make money. And here's the thing. Here's what I want to say where empaths are different. Empaths are naturally very giving. They naturally feel, because that's the way you're wired. As an empath, you are wired to feel what other people are feeling. When you have more than the people around you, you actually feel guilty. You feel bad. And so you will naturally share what you have. So when it comes to money, I want empaths to make more money and not feel guilty about making money, because you are the kind of people that if you make money, you will make the world a better place. Whereas people on the other end of the spectrum, if they will want money for the sake of money and power, and that comes from the insecurity and the belief that we live in a world where we have to be competitive and so on and on. When an empath embraces their ego, they shine their light. But whereas when someone on the other end of the spectrum embraces their ego, it just gives them permission to be more of that. So now I understand why messages like transcend the ego is bad, are being is what spiritual teachers talk about, because when you look at the world at large, what we don't see empaths out there. What we see every day when we watch the world, when we watch the news, when we watch people in leadership positions, when we watch all that, we kind of think, yeah, they could do with a little less ego. But here's the problem. When there are spiritual messages coming at you all the time, when all these teachers are talking about spiritual messages that are telling you that you always have to serve, that it's selfish to take care of yourself, or you always have to suppress your ego, which were the messages of the time I grew up in. Now, the people who are more on the, let's say, the narcissistic sociopath end of the scale, they are not attracted to such messages. They're not attracted to spiritual teachings. The people who are attracted to spiritual teachings are actually the empaths. You who are attracted to my message, and me, and people like us, we who are attracted to spiritual teachings are the empaths. And empaths actually need the opposite messages. So in other words, the people who these messages are designed for, of suppress your ego, blah, 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 that you have to give, those messages are not reaching those people, because they're not even they're not even attracted to go to seek spiritual teachers and listen to those messages. So those of us who are empaths, who continue to make ourselves smaller and weaker and not serve ourselves and feel guilty making money and feel guilty when we feel good and feel guilty taking care of ourselves to the point where we get weak, people like us continue to hear such messages, continue to make ourselves smaller. What happens is we end up dimming our light. And so when we do that, we end up making way for more of the people who are not like us to step into leadership positions. And that's why we see the world at large seems to be run by people on the other end of the scale. And whenever we receive messages like, oh, I have to take care of myself, it's okay to make more money. When we receive messages like that, we kind of think, no, but I don't want to be like those people. But here's the thing. You're not wired that way. You're not at the sociopathic end of the scale. You're never going to be like those people. No matter how much you love yourself, no matter how much you embrace your ego, you are someone who is so plugged in to your empathy, to your 4-dimensional, 6-sensory self, that you are someone who needs to embrace your 3-dimensional, 5-sensory self and everything that goes with taking care of it. That is the muscle that you haven't stretched. You need to empower that part of you. So because I didn't have a role model and I started to understand what it was I needed, my message for you as an empath, my message for you is that you need to do what it takes to empower yourself, not weaken yourself or demean yourself or dim your light. You need to do whatever it takes to empower itself. You need to feel good about feeling good. You need to feel good about pleasure. You need to feel good about making money. This is a message for empaths, because the fact that you will help others is a given. That's who you are. That's how you're wired. But if you don't allow yourself to shine your light, if you don't allow yourself to embrace your 3-dimensional, 5-sensory being and all the trappings that goes with it, you will wither and the world will be deprived of the light that you came here to be. And here are some of the things to watch out. If you're an empath, you're someone who just wants to, you're wired in a way, and this was me, I say this because I relate to you. We're wired in a way where it gives us so much pleasure to bring light to other people, the people around us. That's all we want to do. We just want to bring light. We just want to bring light. But here's the thing. When you don't realize how you're wired, what happens is when you just want to bring light, you attract a lot of people who want that light, but you attract people who are in darkness because they want your light. When you see their darkness, what ends up happening with many of us empaths is we feel guilty because of what they're going through. And because we feel guilty and we feel obligation that we need to help them. And what happens is we start to step into the darkness with them. Instead of lifting them up, we allow ourselves to become depleted. We do that because we feel guilty for having. We feel guilty for having money or for having the resources or for having the love. And we actually start to let go of what we have and we become like them. And we become drawn into, because we feel what they're feeling, and we get sucked into the darkness very easily. And that is exactly what happened to me. So for an empath, you need to know that you have a tendency to do this. And for you, the best thing you can do for everybody around you is to constantly do whatever it takes to shine your light. And what that means, it means to allow yourself to receive. Allow yourself to be successful, because you're someone who's not going to rest with yourself. If you hoarded or you just held on to your success, you would share it. What you would do, and I'm already noticing this, is that as soon as your needs are met, the next thing you're going to be thinking about is, how can I make this bigger so I can help more people? How can I shine my light on more people? That's what the world needs you to do. If more empaths would step into their power, embrace their ego, allow themselves to make money, not see these things as being unspiritual. If more empaths would actually commit to being here in the physical, commit to embracing themselves, then what we would see is more empaths stepping into their power and taking on leadership roles. That is what will change the world. That is what will change what's happening out there. You empaths, we empaths, actually stepping into our power and changing the world. And we need a new spiritual message for that. We really do. One that's specifically designed for empaths, where we can actually feel empowered when we feel good and when we feel pleasure, and not feel guilty and obligated all the time. So things like guilt, obligation, all these things are kryptonite to an empath. They weaken you. They dim your light. And so we have to stop embracing the old paradigm of spirituality. That's the spirituality of last century. We have to stop embracing that. The empaths have to stop embracing that. And we have to have a new paradigm of spirituality, because most of the people who are attracted to spiritual teachings are people who are already aware that there is something more. Most of the people attracted to spirituality are empaths and people who are sensitive. So that was my message of today, and I wanted to touch on a question that came in last week. And before I do, I'm just going to turn to Danny for a minute. Is there anything from the audience that we want to throw out? And if you have anything, you have time to pull it up, because I want to touch on a question that I received last week. The question that I received last week was, so on Facebook, I had written that gratitude is an act of self-love. I had a post up that said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, that if you're able to find gratitude in life, that is a sign of self-love. And the question that somebody posed was that how can you connect gratitude to self-love. They were having trouble connecting gratitude to self-love. So here's how I see gratitude as being a part of self-love. When you love yourself, you feel really good about life. You feel good about yourself. You feel very grateful to be here. But when you are having trouble loving yourself, I use gratitude as a tool, as a stepping stone to loving yourself. So we reverse it, because if you're not feeling the self-love, let's do it the other way around. Let's find things to be grateful for. So as you start to be grateful for the things that are good in your life, and it could be anything. You could be grateful for the fact that you're able to walk, and even if you have health issues, find the things that are going right in your life. It could be anything. It could be a relationship. It could be anything that you're grateful for, and start to find the things you're grateful for. It could be, oh, my puppy is so amazing, it loves me unconditionally, or I have healthy children, or I'm so happy that I'm able to do this art. It makes me so happy when I do this. The more that you can find things in your life to be grateful for every day, it starts to uplift you. So feeling grateful is a sign of self-love. The more that you feel uplifted and the more that you're grateful for, the more you actually feel grateful for being alive. Self-love is about loving the fact that you are alive and here right now. Going back to what I spoke about last week, I spoke about how important it is to be committed to being here in the physical. It's super important to be committed, and that's how we embrace both worlds or both realms, this realm and the other realm. I wanted to reinterpret it in a slightly different way and use the chakra system. Not all of you understand or know the chakra system, and if you don't, it's fine. But the way I see it, if you are someone who's into the chakra system, the way I see it is like this. You imagine the 7 chakras. The lower chakras are the ones that are rooted in the physical, the ones that are rooted in physical pleasure, financial security, things like that. They're very rooted in the physical relationships. The higher chakras are the ones that are more otherworldly. It's your connection to the universe, to God, your higher self, your higher purpose, your reason for being here, your soul. So let's say if we divide it into the lower chakras as the ones that are rooted here, and the higher chakras are connected to the other side and your soul and so on, your higher purpose and your reason for being here. So many of you, your higher chakras are blown wide open. You feel your soul, you feel the connection, you feel you feel the intuition of everyone else. You're blown wide open in your upper chakras, but your lower chakras are blocked. And your clues that your lower chakras are blocked is that your physical body is always struggling with different issues, or obesity, or other niggling issues and pains and illnesses and so on, or your relationships are always suffering, or your finances are always out of order and struggling. You struggle to make money. That means your lower chakras are blocked, but your higher chakras are great. And you keep thinking that if I keep working on my spirituality and going into higher and higher levels, it'll take care of the lower chakras. So my point is, we need to be committed to being here and embrace the needs of the lower chakras, and embrace the fact that we came here for a purpose. And it's okay to feel pleasure and to make money and to do all those things and to work on our relationships and to receive from our relationships. It's okay to go for counseling to get a relationship that serves us and not one where we are being abused and constantly serving the other. We need to actually clear all those things so that we can be committed to being here. And it's okay to do that, because we need to be entrenched to be here so that we can bring all that here. Whereas what I was finding is that most of the spiritual messages, a lot of the spiritual messages I was finding was about opening the higher chakras more and more and more, but not in, but the people who are not being helped were the ones whose higher chakras were already blown open, but were struggling with the lower chakras. So in other words, it's very easy to find books to help people with relationships or money or whatever, but a lot of those books don't resonate with people who are connected to the other world. They're very much written for five sensory beings, or for people who believe we're five sensory beings living in a three-dimensional world. Many of the health books, many of the money books, I didn't resonate with any of those because they are written for people who believe we live in a dog-eat-dog world, in a competitive world. When your higher chakras are open, you know that's not true. You need a different paradigm when it comes to relationships, money, sex, all of this stuff, survival. You need a different paradigm. And that's what I'm getting at. That's why I'm saying you guys have kind of opened from the top down. Most people in the world, the people on the other end of the spectrum, are opening up from the bottom up. They're conquering their survival, and now they're opening up to spirituality. The spiritual messages out there are for those people who are going this way. They're conquering. They've done their survival. They're okay here. Their needs are met. But they only know how to live down here. They don't know how to live up here. Most spiritual messages are targeted for them. I want to bring in spiritual messages that are targeted for people who are the other way around. The people who are empaths, who are already blown open up there, but don't know how to bring it down here. In a nutshell, my book, What If This Is Heaven, even though I did not know that's what I was doing when I wrote it, that is what I was doing when I wrote it. The idea behind my book, What If This Is Heaven, was the idea of bringing that piece, this having blown wide open here, but of living that here in the physical world, of bringing that here and treating everything, money, relationships, survival, all of that from a place of the sacred, from a place of looking at it from the four-dimensional, six-sensory self, looking at it from that perspective and embracing this world from that perspective. And remember, the first step is to commit yourself to being here. That's the first step. The second step is to realize that emotions like guilt and obligation, they don't work for you if you're an empath and you're blown open up here. They are like kryptonite for you. The third step is to realize it's okay to embrace your ego. You need your ego to survive in this world where most people are coming at it from the lower chakras. You need your ego to survive, to deal in this world. A world that is more based on lower chakras than higher chakras. You need it to survive so that you can bring all that into this world. The old messages of transcending your ego don't apply to you because you're bringing that world into this world. So those are the things to remember. And the other thing is that it's good for you to have abundance and money because it helps you to have your needs met so that you can continue to do what you do and help more people. And the final thing to remember is your only job is to shine your light. You are at your best when you shine your light and shine it as bright as you can. You don't need to step into the darkness. It doesn't help anyone if you do. The world needs you to shine your light. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to ask Danny if there's any final words, any messages, anything at all. But I just felt that was an important message to share with you because of everything that I received last week.
No, the only thing you have to do is close the show.
All right, that's you. I thought that was your area.
I think that you're highly qualified now to do it, except just to tell people that Tea with Anita has finally got its own website. And we've got a little feature there, just if you want a reminder for when Tea with Anita is on, and the links, and just a little bit of advance notice if we've got a special guest, if we're running a competition or something. Only if you subscribe to that little reminder will you find out in advance what's happening. So that's teawithanita.com.
So teawithanita.com. And I just wanted to real quickly say, I didn't take any questions from you today because here's what I decided to do, which is so much easier than scrolling through questions, and we lose the pace of the video when we do that. What we've decided to do is I skimmed through the comments and the questions. So everything I spoke about today is very related to the comments and questions. So what I'll do is I'll skim through the comments and questions, and next week's topic will be based on a lot of the stuff that comes from you anyway. So I want you to tune in every week because everything I talk about is based from your comments. Please continue to comment. Please continue to answer questions. Even though I don't answer you directly during the show, it's important because it gives me what I need for the next show. This show was totally based on the feedback I got from the last show. That's how important your feedback is to me. Your feedback is super important, so thank you. And I would like you to do that final thing that you do, of wrapping up the show. And also the cruise is happening in September. We're doing a Mediterranean cruise that leaves out of Venice in Europe. So people who let me know if you're interested in the cruise. They're working on the sales webpage where you will be able to click to find out more. But yes, I'd love to hear from you on everything. You can wrap up.
And if you enjoyed Tea with Anita, please, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, please leave your comments in the space below.
There, I knew I had to do that.
Please let us know what you like about the show. Please let us know if there's anything that you'd like for us to bring onto the show. And remember, sign up to the little reminders at teawithanita.com. Anita will be back here again next Sunday, 9 a.m. Pacific. I believe there is a GMT time, but I've already made a mistake 2 times, and I've been chastised twice for giving the wrong time. But that little reminder will tell you exactly what time it is. So remember, tune in next Sunday, Tea with Anita. Check out the webpage. Please leave us your comments, and we would love to hear from you.
And I'd love for you to subscribe to my YouTube channel as well if you loved this. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Can't wait to see you all next week. And hope to see you at some of my live events, too. We've got a great one coming in Sedona. Bye!